Greetings, everyone, and thank you so very much for joining today's very special panel. Today, we're going to be celebrating women in tech, specifically in the broadcast field. This is the third in the series that we've done, and we've had some amazing conversations, and I think today is going to be no different. But before we get into that, just a few items of housekeeping. First of all, this is being recorded and will be available for on-demand viewing. It usually takes us about a week or so, but once it is ready, it will be viewable on Shure.com, and we will also send an email to all of the registrants with that direct link once it's available. Second of all, as we go through the panel today, if you have any questions, please feel free to type those in the Q&A section, but be patient. We will hold on questions until the end of the session. So have a great time, type in those questions, and we'll answer as many as we can at the end. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to our president and CEO, Miss Chris Schyvinck. Take it away, Chris.
All right. Well, thank you, Cheryl, and welcome everybody to our Women in Technology panel focusing on broadcast. Like Cheryl said, I'm Chris Schyvinck, president and CEO of Shure, and I'm joining you live in our headquarters just outside of Chicago. This is actually our third Women in Technology panel. We started last fall with 4 women on our panel focused on the theater industry. In the spring, we held another international panel on location sound. This time we're focusing on women in technology for broadcast, and we have 5 wonderful panelists today. At Shure, we've certainly taken a bigger role in advocating for more diversity in the audio industry. I actually began my career as an engineer at Shure more than 30 years ago, and I've worked my way to the role of president and CEO. But interestingly, I wasn't the first female leader here. Rose Shure led the company before me. She was the wife of the founder, Mr. Shure. And therefore, since 1995, Shure has had women as leaders at the company. And I think having nearly 30 straight years with a woman in leadership is pretty unique for a company in audio, pretty unique for a company involved with a lot of technology. So I'm proud to be a part of that. And I'm really honored to have this really distinguished panel of great women from the broadcast industry. We're also joined by attendees watching and listening from all over the world. So thank you for joining us. And we have 90 minutes, and we're going to dive into some questions and some interesting topics, I hope. And as Cheryl said, if you think of other questions along the way that I don't have the opportunity to ask, please put them in the chat. So I'd like to first start out with introductions of our panelists here today. And in no particular order, I'll start with Lena. Lena, can you please introduce yourself all the way from the Netherlands?
Absolutely. Well, as you said, I'm from the Netherlands. I work for NEP as a sound assistant, and I have been in television for 5 years almost now. And yeah, I'm very excited to tell everything I've experienced these past years.
Okay, thank you. Jillian.
My name is Jillian Arnold. I'm originally from Chicago and I live in Los Angeles now. I am a recording and workflow engineer, or the artist formerly known as the tape operator in the live events broadcast world. And I'm also the president of Local 695, which is sound, video, and projection here in Hollywood.
Okay, thank you. Yasmin in Seattle, could we hear from you, please?
Hello, I'm Yasmin Blue. I'm originally from Mexico City, and I have been working for the Seattle Mariners for 23 years. I'm the director of broadcast engineering and oversee audio and video throughout the stadium for events and games.
All right, thank you. Apollonia.
Yes, hi, I'm Apollonia, also from the Netherlands. I'm a boom operator freelance for feature films and television fiction series for almost 10 years now.
Okay, thank you. Rounding out our panel is Robyn Gerry-Rose in LA also. So Robyn.
Hi, good morning. My name is Robyn Gerry-Rose, and I am an A2, and I'm also part of 695.
Okay. Well, those are the basic introductions. We're super happy that you are all here with all these different time zones on top of it. It's early in LA. It's, I don't know, middle of the afternoon in Netherlands. So, but I think everybody can tell there's a lot of talent and pretty interesting experience here. So I'd like to start out the first question with, how you all got into this industry and, what was your path, and was there somebody or something that inspired you to make this your career? So, Lena, if you don't mind, we could start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. While I was studying sound and vision, I had an internship at a radio station, and that was actually the first time I really came in contact with audio, and it really was something that clicked in my mind, and I didn't have that anywhere else. So when I finished, I started looking around, and television was always something magical, really. So when I found I could actually work there at the age that I was, I really took the chance, and yeah, I've loved it ever since.
Thank you. Jillian.
I actually got started. My background is actually in camera, and one of my very first contracts was with the government with NASA. And so I started shooting a lot of spaceflight hardware for the Mars program. And I really was interested in the workflow of how video files and audio files got from production into post. And that just naturally morphed into working in live TV. And I got partnered with a company called Panelists, which was at the time, 10, 12 years ago, a very cutting edge recording server system. And as one of the very first operators, I've grown with that company and moved into other spaces as well. But it was just a natural evolution from that early camera engineering all the way through into the engineering that I do today.
Thank you, Jillian. And Yasmin, 23 years with the Seattle Mariners. Can you tell us a little bit about how you landed there? And you mentioned you're from Mexico City. So how did you get from there to Seattle?
Wow, that's a long story. Yes, I'm originally born and raised in Mexico City, and I have dual nationality. So I've spent a little bit of time in the United States and Mexico as well. But I started really in Mexico. I love music and singing and dancing and writing, and did theater in Mexico. And at some point in my life, things turned around, and I ended up coming for vacation to visit my dad here at the United States with my 2-year-old daughter. And after a little bit, things got kind of, do I go back home? Do I stay here for a little bit longer? So I ended up going back to school. I had already been in the university in Mexico, and there was not a lot of options in the city of Tacoma. So I went to Bates Technical College, and there was television. So I did an associate's of broadcast communication there. And later on, I went to City University to do a networking degree. Time flies. And I had the opportunity, still at Bates, to do an internship at the Seattle Mariners. And that was my start. From there, I was hired full time when the internship ended, and started learning everything audio, video in the technical side versus the artistic side. So it has been quite a ride.
All right, thank you. Robyn, how about your story? How did you land here?
Well, I was a band geek in high school. I played the French horn. And I think, Chris, you did too, right? Is that right?
I do too, yes. So that's a common thread.
So I knew I loved music, but I knew I didn't want to perform as my career. And there was a group of musicians, professional musicians, that came into my high school and talked about what life is like as a professional musician. And they also mentioned, hey, there's these other peripheral careers that are in music that don't require performance. And they mentioned recording, and that sounded really fun and exciting. So I went to Columbia College in Chicago, checked out their program, and was told, don't go into recording. It's not a good time for recording, because this was many years ago. So I was told to go into live sound, and I did, and it was fun. And when I was in Chicago, I was working for a live sound company there. I also started working for broadcast, and but now I'm here in LA.
Well, then this was an unusual meeting with 6 people and 2 French horn band geeks in it. That seems like more than the norm. So nice to hear your story. Apollonia, we need to hear from you too.
Well, actually, I started off knowing for sure I wanted to be an editor. But in my second year, we all had to rotate positions to get an insight of what the other disciplines in film do. So I landed in sound and I fell in love with our beautiful profession. After that day, I never looked back and I changed my courses and I only went for sound. After graduation, I started off with sound recording on documentaries, assisting on set as a sound mixer and second unit gigs. But what really caught my eye from behind the sound card was the boom operator, so close to the fire of the set instead of the outer ring as a sound mixer. And the focus, the physical effort, and like the dance amazed me. So I decided to only take boom op jobs and take the leap. And for about 10 years now, never look back.
So when I would listen to all of your stories, it sounds like there was, something rather fortuitous that introduced you to the industry. And then there was, like a little spark that got you going and got you hooked in. But I would have to imagine along the way, there were some challenges that you faced getting, either getting into the industry or maybe even more recently, there's been some challenges. So who could share some of those challenges and how you overcame perhaps? Anybody want to jump first? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I was very fortunate that I was one of the first in my field as the field was evolving. And as a woman in technology, I was able to jump on that tech, learn it very early on, have the space and the time to honestly to fail and to learn. I mean, that's where we learn, right? Is in our failures. And so because I was the first, it wasn't almost an issue that I was a woman. I almost experienced like a reverse ageism because I was a younger woman or because I look younger than I am. A lot of my male counterparts wouldn't give me the credibility that I felt that I deserved, which I think kind of sometimes fosters some sort of imposter syndrome in women. But what's interesting is when I turned 40, I thought for sure this would go away. And now that as I'm traversing into my 40s, I'm finding it's not going away and it's just frustrating me even more. And I think that we really need to stop looking at someone's outside and really start to look at their knowledge base and their credibility and give people, especially women, the more credit they deserve and give them the opportunities they deserve. And that's not a criticism on my male counterparts. I don't even think they know they're doing it, but I have so many stories where I had the information and I knew I was correct in what I was thinking in the procedure that had to be done. But I had to go tell a male counterpart who's older and, more seasoned than me, to go say those things for it to land any type of credibility. And I've really, this is something I've been thinking a lot about. Like I said, as I turned 40, I really thought it would go away. For some reason, I thought, you know, getting into that next age bracket, like I would gain, that would go away. And I'm always curious if it will ever go away. And so I'm hoping with the next generation it will, and perhaps all of you can help with that. We can help spread that word and that message.
Jillian, have you been able to find any mentors or, people to talk, peers maybe to talk to about that phenomenon along the way to help you through a little bit? Because I have found that sometimes just understanding that you're not going through that, you're not the only one, maybe that can be helpful.
Yeah, and Robyn and I work together quite a bit. Robyn and I are working on mentoring a young woman coming into the business. And so I think we naturally find those people. And I've also noticed as you get older and more well-seasoned in this business, you tend to find those other people like on this panel, like everyone shook their head when I said it, that alone was comforting enough for me. But I think sometimes as being the only woman in a room, we find it really lonely when it comes to those situations. And so we definitely have to try and seek out those other women like on this panel to have that support group.
So with all the nodding going on, maybe someone else could share a similar story here.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, when I first started, I always felt like the weaker link which wasn't necessarily something people said to me, but because I was one of the few women working on the job, I kind of assumed because it is or was a man's world, and to start it again and be very young can be very daunting. And even now, when I do have the experience and I know that being a woman kind of has a brighter side as well, because you know, being a sound guarantee, you do have to be in the space of people. So when you're a woman, they do appreciate it a little bit more than when the men go very, don't want to be rude to them, but they can be a bit ballsy about it. So when we do it, it's a lot more gentle and a lot more understanding. So I do feel like there is a bright side to it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the weak feeling goes away after time. And I think that's just a process that has to evolve, because as more women enter the industry, I think it will become less, but it's just something that time has to go over at this point.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Lena.
Yeah,
Robyn?
Lena, sorry, Chris. I totally understand what you're talking about. And I wonder if you had the same experience I have, where I've actually been putting a microphone on a woman and I've had her say to me, "Oh, thank goodness you're here. It's so nice being with a
Every
woman."
time. Every time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah,
And I do understand it, because it's very intimate sometimes, depending on the clothes they're wearing, especially. So yeah, I do get it. So it helps a lot that the people we work with do appreciate it a lot and tell us as well.
and hopefully our bosses, the production people, whoever,
Somewhere we'll see it and appreciate it. Yeah.
exactly. And we'll keep that in mind when they're hiring crews.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, in my experience, they do tend to like acknowledge this a lot. Like when you have like a web series or with a lot of young women, they really like it if the boom operator or somebody in the sound crew is a woman for placing the lavalier mics. I mean, when I began, it's a physical profession, so I had to really prove myself. People were like, "Well, you're not a man, so can you lift this for so long?" And well, as time goes on, you prove them wrong, and now everybody sees the plus side of it instead of only maybe what you can do, but what you add.
Being in sports, my experience has been a little bit different. When I started out, there was very few women that I've encountered, even throughout the years. That has changed probably in the last 4 to 5 years, where we see women in all roles in the sport industry, which is beautiful. But I was fortunate enough to have in school as well as at the job mentors that were interested in helping and teaching to be able to avoid failure in the future. So that was great. And
I'll
these
share
guys were men.
It is really fascinating to see, to your point, Yasmin, more, female sports broadcasters, even the on-screen people. It's really very positive to see that movement and change.
Oh yeah.
I'll share with you all a funny story that kind of happened early for me with that, that feeling of self-doubt that you're talking about, and, feeling like, well, maybe I'm not as good or something. It happened when I was in engineering school. And I would sit there during a lecture, and in mechanical engineering, even to this day, there's not that many women, unfortunately. But back then, it was always, I was the only one in the room. So when the other people in the class were asking questions, I thought, oh, they know so much more than me. What am I doing here? And I finally got involved with a study group, a little small group. They asked me to participate on Wednesday nights. And as soon as I met with people more one-on-one, I realized, they don't know anything more than I do. We're all confused by what the professor just said. So we all started working together and just making those connections and actually talking to people instead of, the self-doubt and assuming that you're the only one that's not understanding something is, hopefully people learn that early on in their careers. So, so I want to, speaking of technology, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about, the transformation that has happened in the broadcast industry. popularity of streaming and other technologies coming to the forefront, how do you think broadcast production has evolved, and how have you personally been able to evolve with that too? So curious to hear your thoughts.
I'll start. And within sports and events that we do at the stadium, it's we have added streaming solutions for some things, for press conferences, for different events where people don't want to come to the stadium due to COVID and whatnot. But it's not, it hasn't taken over. I still think that there's a lot of value to doing events and games and services, in person, and people need that connection. So even though we do hybrid broadcasts for some specific events, it's limited to the point that we haven't purchased a lot of equipment to do so, and sometimes we just rent it out to not maintain it and keep it in hand.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I can speak on it from a more industry level, as being president of the local. I'm especially proud of Local 695 in Hollywood and how they really led the forefront of the streaming technology during the pandemic. And especially in the broadcast fields, when the pandemic was very new, everyone was scared, people didn't want to leave their homes. Um, the addition of streaming with companies like Zach Holly's consulting company really helped production get off the ground and allowed executives to stay at home or stay in their offices and be safe while maintaining the distance that we needed, and that our union mandated with the employer on set. And I look at that technology that, was organically grown very fast to get us all back to work, and the changes that it's made today. I mean, every single show that Robyn and I work on has some sort of video feed streaming out to someone who isn't on site so that they can still give notes, or that talent camp can see rehearsals. Talent camp can, talk to Robyn and make notes before they get to set. But I think it's really fascinating. It was a real broadcast cultural shift. But even furthermore, in my own little, tape operator, tape room world, the technology that we had beforehand where we could send files from any broadcast truck anywhere in the world really flourished. The idea that post wasn't coming to set to get the audio files, to get the video files, that we were able to set up fiber lines. I mean, I just did a show 2 weeks ago where we were in Georgia and we posted in Ireland, and we sent 10 terabytes of video files over fiber to Dublin daily. I mean, this is all born out of the pandemic, and these are new solutions and new methods that aren't going away. In fact, they're being driven to work even better and more economical and faster. And so I think we're in a really, really exciting time as technicians. And yes, the pandemic we may feel it in a financial setback, but I think in a technical way, it's really an advancement and something that I think in 10 years from now, we're going to look back and see a lot of what's coming was born in that small 6 to 9 month window.
It's funny that you say that, Jillian, because that's been my hypothesis, that things were kind of trending in a certain way, and we probably would have gotten there in like 10 years is the number I always use, but somehow a lot of things just got jump started out of necessity. So that's interesting.
It was amazing how like that first, 5 months, how everyone with some sort of engineering background in the broadcast, really boots on the ground. I mean, there were people like me and others building control rooms in our home just to keep shows going.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing that we can do that, and that we have the technology at our fingertips to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Other thoughts from anybody else on technology, streaming, how it's changed your role?
You have to learn fast.
Yeah,
Exactly.
You have to learn very
flexible,
fast.
adaptable.
Yes, be adaptable, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think at this point also we do a lot more than at first was expected of us and know a lot more, which makes the options endless. But in some way you start to become creative with the technology you're working with, even if it isn't necessary, just because you have the knowledge now to do even more than you already knew how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it also it allowed streaming specifically for example, for our editors being able to do all their work from home and download stuff fast and whatnot. It was an opportunity to feel productive in a time that was so confusing, terrifying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Apollonia or anybody else want to add in? Robyn? Nothing. Okay. Well, then, in that event, I would like to kind of have us go back again to the topic of women in this industry and specifically in your field. So you're all at pretty good, places, I think, in your careers and seem happy with the challenges that face you all the time. How do you think more women can get involved in broadcast production? Why do you think what prevents that from happening today and how could that change?
I think that a lot of young women don't know these positions are even available. I think when you go the traditional film school route, it's, director, producer, writers, maybe cinematographer, maybe sound mixer, production designer. But the more people, more young women that I speak to, they don't understand that there's so many other jobs available.
Mhm.
And so I think I think it's really on us to be the leaders in that mentorship for younger women. Like I said, Robyn and I have a young woman in New Jersey. She reached out to the local and said, "I want to be a live audio mixer." I've never had that come across my desk. I'm like, of course I want to bring you in and introduce you to Robyn and other people as well. But I don't think it's just a matter of giving the opportunities. I think it's now to the point where we have to actually set up the resources for women to be able to continue to do this job. And I think part of that is setting up like family resources. They're not women's issues, these are family issues. How can we have a work-life balance? How can we, be with our families and our kids and our dogs while also maintaining these, high intensity jobs? It's not okay that we just put women in these positions or put them in leadership roles. We have to actually now create the support for them to stay there. And I think that's really the trajectory that we need as we cultivate a larger pool of women in this industry.
You hit on two key things, Jillian, that I'd like to hear from the other panelists if they have some insight. So on the awareness thing with people not even knowing that this is a path, very common with what I see with, kind of the engineering world that I grew up in, that, young girls in junior high or high school, even, when they start getting introduced to STEM classes, and there's more of them now compared to like when I was growing up, which is fantastic. But there's still like this shying away from it, like maybe it's not cool or something. I don't know. But the more that you can kind of make that connection with people when people are younger, maybe that's the way to do it, to create that awareness at an earlier age. So I'd like to see if any of you have thoughts on that. And then the part about once you're actually in, the field, and there is this complication with what is happening in your personal life, what's happening with the demands of the job. I have heard ideas about, if there's ways to do more, like job sharing kind of things, or if there's ways to just make that a little bit different than it is today. The demands that you all face are intense. So yeah, just curious what other panelists might think about the introduction early on, and then how can you, I never like the word balance because I don't think anybody can achieve perfect balance, but how do you actually kind of like get the work done and keep your personal life sane as well?
I think the lack of visibility of different professions, and not only technology, is definitely a problem. How to, I mean, there's so many careers out there that I had no idea even existed growing up. I got into my 30s and I still didn't know they existed, or opportunities. I had no idea when I was close to 35 years old that you can do video production and audio production in not only in schools and in sports and in a lawyer's firm, or you can do it um, a restaurant. You can do it also. You could do it also in companies such as hospitals, where they have a big video production inside there for things that they are doing. That lack of visibility doesn't allow people to want to get into an industry because they don't know what there is. I think that would start more, not necessarily in high school. I think when you get to high school, you have kind of an idea of where you want to go uh, for the little information that you've gotten from school. I think it has to start earlier, even in grade school. Robotics in grade school would be wonderful. I think it would be a really beautiful opportunity for kids to develop their skills in a way that other um, classes do not give them. And when it comes to work balance, I don't think that exists.
Agreed.
Or it's very difficult to achieve. I think that you put a lot into your career and you lose a lot in your family and vice versa. In order to succeed in both, you have to have support, a very strong support in both, at your workplace as well as home. And that is maybe not impossible, but it's very difficult. And I haven't found the way to do it yet.
I feel so lucky as far as the work-life balance stuff goes. And a huge part of that is because for me, the audio departments, the audio teams I work with are quite large. Like a small show would be 6 people in the audio department, and that's very small. So I'm lucky in that respect that, we're part of this little group. And I feel like there has been such an effort amongst us to try to take care of each other. If there's a night where we're working quite late, but we know that somebody has a kid at home or something's going on or whatever, like we'll try to let another person kind of go a little bit early or whatever. We'll kind of like work together to try to take care of each other. But that's such like a built-in thing that we do. And I'm just in this like luxury position that I could be a part of a team that does something like that. I don't know how to extend that into other productions, but it helps.
Apollonia or Lena, as we're talking through this, it maybe is a little bit of a U.S. centric view, but do you feel the same way about what we're talking about, either in terms of how do you get more connection with young people at a younger age? Maybe it's different in Europe, I'm not sure. And then what about once you're in the throes of the job and the balance or lack of balance, I guess we're saying?
Yeah, for the school part, the school system is very different. That's the first, which means that some choose their first study when they're 16, some when they're 17, and some when they're 18, depending on the level they are doing. And when you're 16, they already have to choose the job they want to do for the rest of their life, which at first is crazy to even think about. But there are so many options to study, and a lot of the courses are very broad, so it isn't very specified anymore, which means you have a lot of options, which for schools makes it even harder to acknowledge all the different jobs they could even begin to think of. So it's always very vague, and at the point that you're done with school, the very few jobs you have seen, those are the ones you're interested in, without even knowing that there might be another job that you might find even more exciting. So I think for us here, it's mostly at the schools that they have to change in some ways the way they teach it. because I think if they are a bit more specific about it, there will be a lot more women, even in television or in audios, especially.
Mhm.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. And on the topic of like the balance, I think in the Netherlands there is now an initiative that's the translation is nice weekend, and they stimulate the productions to like not film in weekends, not film at night or at like Christmas or other holidays. And it's growing really fast, and it's all like all the disciplines, not only sound but camera, everything, everybody is involved. So I think in the Netherlands we're going the wrong way. We're on the right track.
Mhm. Well, that's very positive to hear. So maybe someday we can follow some suit over here. Um, so, talking about these particular topics and thinking about the companies that you're affiliated with, or thinking about, companies like ours, as a manufacturer that's involved with the industry, what could companies actually do? We're talking a little bit about the school system, but what could companies actually do to help support more women getting into the industry, you think?
I think at this point, they just have to make it more visible that women do actually work for the company, because the problem isn't necessarily that there aren't women who apply to a job when there's a vacancy, because they don't turn down women who apply for it. So I think you when you start looking specifically for women, that won't work either, because um, that just gives a weird view. But I think when they put women a bit more on the front at this time, that's what's gonna work the most.
Mhm.
I think again, it falls under visibility of a company of what you can do at that place. Um, when I started in sports, I had no idea that truly going to a stadium, you had a marketing department, you had a ticketing department, a sales department, a sponsor department, the broadcast department, the engineering department, all within the same umbrella of the company. And um, one of the things that, for example, at the stadium we have done for many years is DECA Day. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but DECA Day is high school kids, and I don't know exactly how uh, the kids are invited, but high school kids come to the stadium one day during a baseball game, and they have the opportunity to sit with a panel of employees where they talk about their roles at the stadium and how they got there, just to give them visibility of what is available at a place such as ours. And I think when companies do that kind of service to the community, where you can display, hey, in the bank, we have sales people, manager people, or security people, or whatnot, then it opens a door for possibilities for people that are looking for jobs in the future and what they can do at certain companies. So I think that's important, to provide visibility, to provide um, fairs of job opportunities, not necessarily of hiring, but of displaying what the company can offer if you were to want to work there at some point.
That sounds like fun. Can I get invited to a DECA Day? I'd like to learn
Yeah.
about the behind the scenes.
I
But
think
wanna-
this partner. Go ahead, Robyn. It's
No,
all
go
you.
ahead, Jillian. I'm going to take this in a weird direction. So go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was just gonna bounce off that, and yeah, partnerships I think are really important. Like we have a trainee program with our local, the Y16A program, and partnering with other companies like Shure or Chronology or any, software or hardware in the company really helps educate younger women or people of diverse backgrounds. And I think just having the products and the education available to those who are really interested is really meaningful, more meaningful than I think we even know.
I actually want to applaud Sure real quick. And to be perfectly honest, the only reason that I wanted to do this panel is because because I love the Shure Twinplex Lav so much. And I just want to do like a huge shout out to Jen and to John Bourne and their team and the amazing R&D that they did coming up with the Twinplex. I especially want to highlight how amazing the headset is, the TH53, because I've worked with a lot of different headsets before with other companies, DPA, and they don't make products for everybody. The world is designed by men for men, and it's so amazing that this Twinplex headset is like the wonderful exception. And I can actually put this headset on almost anybody, and I can actually make it fit. That is so rare, and it's so wonderful. And I put headsets on a lot of women and kids, and it's so nice that like this gear actually fits them. So thank you for doing all the R&D. Thank you for thinking of other people when you designed it, and that's a success story. So thank you.
Well, if that's a weird direction, I'm for it all day long. Okay. But I will say that I'll answer my own question a little bit. That was a very interesting perspective to hear that from you, because when I think about what companies can do to, move the needle on more diversity in the industry, it is by hiring the kind of people that do the things that you just described that, Jen and John have done, right? Being out in the field and understanding the actual application and understanding the complications of what, you need to do with a microphone like that. And you can't do it, sitting just in your company headquarters in the middle of Illinois with, everybody, kind of looking and acting the same. So it's why we do put people all around the world. Companies, like Shure and others, I think I'm very happy to see that not just the companies in the industry, but also like the trade organizations themselves having a lot more attention on this issue and talking about why aren't we more reflective of our community of users? Why can't we, change the needle here a little bit? And so through industry organizations, companies, and then also extending a little bit into academia, there's more attention, more conversation than ever before. These conversations were not happening 10 years ago. So the fact that everybody does have some focus on it now and is doing things to try to bring people up into their organizations, whether it's through internship programs or making sure that people do get proper mentoring, find a network when they come into a company and don't feel alone or isolated. The fact that this attention does exist right now, I think it's moving the needle slowly, maybe not as quickly as I would like to see it, but the needle is moving and the conversation is good, and we need to make sure that the conversation keeps happening. So I'm glad to hear about that experience, Robyn, because all companies do need to be focusing like that. So any other thoughts on what companies can do to help get more women in this industry?
I actually have a question for you, Chris, if that's okay.
Sure.
With what you just said about how we're widening our vision of potential people to outreach, do you think that perspective comes because you are a woman leader? That you perhaps have a different perspective than a male counterpart, and that's why you're widening your horizon? Do you think that comes
In part, but I think it's actually also where corporate America is actually going right now, and understanding that the data is out there. The data is clearly out there that companies succeed when they do a better job of making sure that they are more reflective of their customer base, right? And it comes through in the products that you make, like Robyn just described. It comes through in terms of how you perform as a company. So I think when I talk about the conversation, it's just happening in corporate America at the right time. I have happened to have a lot more passion about it because I have, walked in the shoes and kind of know what it feels like. So maybe that helps a little bit, but I'm just pleased. I'm even involved with a couple of different universities, my alma maters, and the fact that, again, I've been on boards with these universities for over a decade, and only in the last 5 years has this become an absolutely hot topic. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful to see they're talking about how to reach into like Yasmin said, not just high schools, but reaching into grade schools and like doing visits with, people from campus going into the schools and talking about, hey, here's what a job in mechanical engineering actually is. Not that you think maybe it's like plumbing and fixing stuff in the house, like was what like grade school kids actually think about the field. So making those kind of introductions, earlier, it's a live conversation and it's an active one and it's nice to see, but it doesn't hurt that I've kind of, been through it and, have a lot of passion about it. So good question. All right, I'm going to ask one more question and then we're going to probably turn it over to the audience here. So what message would you have for what we're just talking about right now? The students, the young professionals, maybe even people that have been in the industry for a while. What message would you have to them to help them move into our industry and perhaps your type of job?
I think that there's several options. It depends on if you're just exploring the industry or you want a permanent full-time job and grow into it. I think local theaters, churches allow for volunteering, and it's impressive. Some theaters and some churches have amazing products when it comes to audio and video, and there's always mentorship. And I think that for anybody that is willing to put the time in and to work hard, they will have a great opportunity to see if this is the industry that they like and then pursue it from there. I've had audio engineers come and work for us seasonally. A couple of them were from churches and they did a magnificent job and they got trained in a church, not in a school. And later on they went into school because they really fell in love with the craft. So I think that's an option.
Mm-hmm.
I always say there's three parts to success. It's what you know. This is you're always learning with this job. I think that's why we all like this job, right? Is that there's always a new problem to solve. There's always new technology to learn. There's always something on our list of, how we upkeep our skills. So it's what you know and your willingness to learn, but it's also who you are, your determination and your passion, but also, just gonna say it, your hygiene, because we've all been around someone, it's we jam a lot of people in small environments, so it's, making sure that you're a team player. And then I hate to say it, but the third part is just, some of it's luck. It's being in the right place at the right time, networking, making sure that you're going out to lunch with your coworkers or doing those events, panels like this, outreach. Sometimes it's just a matter of like shooting someone that email. Hi, you don't know me, but I saw you here, or I heard you speak here. Can I pick your brain? It's it's a job that encompasses a lot, but it's interesting because all the women that I know in this field, I'm always in awe of, because they're able to tackle all three of those. You know what I mean? And they're always a go-getter.
Thanks, Jillian.
I totally agree with you, Jillian. Just send that email, find somebody you think makes stuff that you like, find like-minded people that are willing to give you the chance, and work hard. Always prepare, stay open for advice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep,
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Lena.
I think also when you start in the industry as a woman, that you shouldn't see yourself as a weak link, but take the opportunity, because we actually are in a better spot sometimes than you might think. And you should definitely take the chances of that.
Yeah. Robyn?
I was just going to add, be curious and let that curiosity guide you, because often careers, regardless of the industry, careers are often not linear, and you never know who you're going to meet and what's going to happen. So just like y'all have said, be open, and network and be aware of the people around you. And often people will notice the hard work that you do without you really realizing. If you're just there and you're keeping your chin up and you're working hard and you're doing your thing, like other people notice that. And you can even sort of get work that way by other people.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm going to add a little punctuation to that, Robyn, what you just said. Because I think we all do work very, very hard, and we do hope along the way that that gets noticed. But I guess I won't add punctuation. I'm going to add a twist to that. We also have to know when people noticing isn't maybe enough, and it's maybe a little bit outside of the comfort zone sometimes, but to advocate for yourself a little bit and make it known what your goals are. If you're not in a position at the moment where you feel like you should be, you want to do something a little bit different. That's an experience that maybe we've all had at some point in our careers, but it takes us out of the comfort zone a little bit. And actually, a lot of the things that you're talking about as a panel here, sometimes you just have to go outside of that comfort zone a little bit and maybe be a little vocal about where you want to be in your career. So just kind of a little bit of experience there, I guess, from my end. So, all right. Well, I'm going to ask Cheryl to pop back in here and help us moderate questions we may get from the audience. So, Cheryl, welcome back.
Hi, what a great conversation. Thank you all so much for your insights. That was fascinating. We don't have a ton of questions, so if you've got a question, get it in now. But we do have one that I'll start with. We often focus on the perception that it's harder to succeed in these jobs as a woman, but can you share how you've experienced unique benefits, generally speaking, that you think women bring to these roles in broadcast?
For me personally, it was, oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, you go.
For me, it was like definitely working with other women on sets. They like that you're a little bit softer, more focused on the emotional part of the job, especially actresses. This is like what they miss sometimes on set. They have a really emotional scene. It takes a lot of them, and the men are like, okay, next. And nobody is really paying attention to what that does to a person. And I think maybe women are more, I don't know, sensitive of this. So wiring women. So that was for me a big plus sometimes.
Absolutely. I actually have kind of a fun story about that. I have sort of a fun specific thing. So earlier in this year, I worked on the Academy Awards. And for that show, I have sort of two moments where I'm interacting for the most part with talent. So we have our rehearsal day, the day before the show, and that's the day where talent comes in. They have a chance to see where their marks are on stage and have a chance to actually run through what they're going to say. So I'm putting a mic on them for rehearsal. They're obviously not wearing what they're going to wear during the show. And I want to try to be as prepared as I can. So I kind of have like a little script in my head of what I ask them and want to talk to them about to be more prepared for the next day. I want to know, where's a good spot for the mic pack to live. Just again, sort of a reminder to them like, oh yeah, you're going to be wearing a mic pack. Maybe you don't have the most fitted dress in the entire world or whatever, or I'll bring a thigh pack for you, whatever. But I also ask them what color their outfit is because I have a few different color options and I want to be ready and fast when the moment comes. So I was going through this little script with Sigourney Weaver and we were, just chatting about it. And it was fun to like collaborate. She's wearing a gold outfit. And after we had that little chat, she kind of paused for a second and turned to me and she said, a man would never ask me these questions. And just, yeah, amazing moment.
That
I think my size is an advantage too. Like the fact that I'm not a big guy, there's been certain situations when I was doing camera work for JPL where we would have to crawl through really tight spaces, or like, for example, we were doing parachute tests for the Mars rover, and there's like a box on the side of the wind tunnel, and no man could fit in that box. So they asked me, like, do you have a fear of heights? No, I don't. Are you claustrophobic? No, I'm not. And next thing I know, for 60 minutes, I'm in this tiny box with a camera shooting parachutes in a angle that you just can't get unless you were in that box. And those are the angles that they ended up using to, for their engineering analysis to put that rover on Mars. No man could have done that. They were too big. But my size and my weight allowed me to literally be locked in a box for an hour. Um, so I try and use it to my advantage. I mean, I'm sure as a boom op, same thing. You can get into places that others can't. And I don't think we celebrate that enough, or we don't. I think that's a great question. We don't think about that. We always think about the negatives when there really are a lot of positives to being a woman in this field.
Mhm.
That is awesome. I love that. That's an interesting take on it. Because so often people talk about, how men quote unquote take up space, and we talk about as women, we don't always take up as much space, but sometimes that is a benefit, so an interesting take on that. Thanks, Jillian. Next question. What are some of the things that you love most about your industry and role in broadcasting?
For me, it would be
Uh,
all the technical. Oh, sorry.
no, you go. It's fine.
For me, it will be all the technical aspects of video and audio and the challenges that you face every day and being able to fix something. That is the best feeling at the end of the day, to be able to successfully complete a task that you is presented to you, just like when we're starting to do streaming, and being able to do that kind of stuff. That is, I think that's the reward at the end of the day, is completing your task successfully.
Yeah, I think for me that even though I work in quite a big company, um, we have very different kind of crews depending on the show we're taping at the time. But every time we end up being a bit of a family, and we experience the whole thing together. And you do at the end um, realize that you did make something quite amazing, actually, and that bonds us, and that's something that you always take with you. And I think that's one of the best things about the industry.
Mhm.
Fantastic. I have a question specifically for Jillian regarding 695. Can you talk a little bit about sort of what is the female ratio to male, and what's the female representation in 695 right now?
Oh, that's a great question. I sat on a panel a few years ago with other local leaders, and I was really proud to say that our 14-person board, we actually have a higher percentage of women than most locals. Of our executive leadership to our women, we are going into nominations in a few weeks, so we're hoping to bring more women into the panel. But the women on that panel are really diverse. I mean, everything from like myself in broadcast to Wheel of Fortune, Mandalorian, um, you know, uh, really, really strong women in their careers who took an active interest in the contractual. As for our actual membership, we're not even at 10% membership. I think we're hovering in the 9.5 range, right? But we did a survey a few years ago, and of that percentage of women, 30 to 40% of that 9% are actually in leadership roles. So what we would consider like a mixer role or a maintenance engineer role, like one of the higher jurisdictions within our local. I found this really interesting that the women in our locals are really leaders. I mean, Robyn's an A2, and I mean, she is a leader in her field. She is the go-to. And I think that's really a trait to being a woman in 695, is being on that forefront. We're trying really hard to bring in more women. I'd love to get it above 10%, to be quite honest. And so there's a lot of organizing efforts, especially in, like I said, in our trainee program. But we're also using that as an avenue to get more women and people of lower income, diverse backgrounds into the industry. And for a few years, the employer was really on game with that. It's kind of slowed down recently, but we're hoping that it will pick back up in the next few years so that we can bring more in.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that insight. Here's a really interesting question. To one of Chris's earlier points, how do you think women should show and tell the work that they're doing without bragging or being perceived as not a team player?
I think the first question is it bragging? I mean, like this is the question I ask myself all the time. Well, how would a man present this? So we may perceive it as being bragging, but is it bragging? I think that's the first question. And I know it's come up on this panel, like putting ourselves out there more and showing our expertise more. Maybe it's just we have to find a different way to communicate that. And the perception is maybe not what it seems. I'm not sure. Anyone can. It's a discussion point. So
I don't think that's showing your accomplishments. It's bragging. So you're just sharing and being proud of what you do. So the take of how other people take it, that's another story, and we have no control.
Good lesson for life in general. All right. Here's an interesting one. What are your career goals? Meaning, do you want to keep doing what you're doing now, or are you hoping to move into other roles in broadcasting?
Lena, you still have a lot of runway in front of you. What do you think about that one?
Well, as of right now, the goal is to become a sound engineer. But I'm 23 now, and I'm going to be in A2, so it's very near the road somehow, which I think is very exciting, but also kind of terrifies me, because I know that as a sound engineer, I know I want to accomplish that, but after that, I haven't got any idea. I'd like to keep my options open because, the television industry the options are endless. So I like to keep my eye open for anything that comes across.
I know in my life, definitely not involved in audio or broadcast like you all, but being open to opportunities and not necessarily having a focus on one thing has led to even greater opportunities in my life. So fantastic advice. All right. Here's an interesting one. I know you already shared your path through school to where you are now, but is this what you always wanted to do when you grew up, when you were younger? Were you always interested in technology?
I wasn't always interested in technology. I was interested in entertainment, music, and theater. And the path came about this way to be in technology. And I've enjoyed it very much. So who knows what the future will hold, but right now I'm content.
I had my first computer at 5. And when I got into high school, I knew that I wanted to go into this career. And I think that knowing that I was provided with a computer at such a young age and was able to explore that DOS platform, yep, I just said it. And then wanting to get into more of the creative, I realized there is a lot of creativity in the technical, whereas a lot of film schools just think creativity is the story that we put up. There's a lot of creativity in what we do. And I think I always wanted to do this. And I'm really excited to see where AI is going, from a policy standpoint and a creative standpoint. I'm very involved with that as well.
So speaking about where you came from and sort of differing experiences, does anybody have any thoughts on seeking a college education in audio versus learning on the job?
I think for us in Netherlands, it isn't necessarily a requirement to have studied it. when you have to drive and you're curious, you will find the way. So I think not, but it's not bad going to school. It does help a lot, and you do get a lot of experience from it, which is a thing that I carry with me most at the end, and not necessarily the knowledge that I've come across there.
Yeah, I
Actually,
agree. Yeah, yeah. If
Yeah,
you
go
want to go into like the set work, it's very possible that you just like hit people up that make movies or series that you like. You go to an internship, and then you roll into it. But like you said, Lena, like the broader like to just evolve yourself also as a person before you like go with for a career solely. I think it's always good to have like a good education, but it's very possible to in the Netherlands to work in film if you didn't go to a film school or something.
yeah, just giving yourself the time and the space to evolve creatively. I think that's what you're saying, Apollonia. It's
Yep.
I have a master's, and to be quite honest, I don't think I'd be where I am without that master's. So
All right. Here's a question, and this has come up in, I think, every single one of these panels we've done so far. So it's a hot topic. How do you overcome the dreaded imposter syndrome? Or do you not suffer from it at all?
Anybody doesn't, I want to hear from them.
Well, I actually had that a few weeks ago because everything started moving very fast paced, so I didn't have any time to acknowledge what was happening. And some of my friends who work here at the company actually had to sit me down and tell me everything that had happened the past few weeks, just to acknowledge it. And I think here in the company, everyone applauds everyone's success, which helps a lot to recognize your own successes.
Anyone else have any insights on how you've dealt with imposter syndrome?
I think just having that support group, having that group of girlfriends in the industry telling you, nope, you got this, keep going. You know, every once in a while you just need that text saying, keep going, keep going.
It's a super helpful text, that's for sure. All right. So you talked a little bit about streaming earlier, but as leaders in your field, what do you think is the future of broadcasting, and what do you think it looks like in 5 or 10 years?
I think the natural evolution is we're just going to go towards IP-based protocols. Networking skills are going to be an absolute must. So anyone younger in this field getting into it, especially in the broadcast side, that basic networking skills, how to use a switch, how to IP computers, how to, Dante, Maddie, all those, learning it all is really important. And I also think just keeping an eye on an AI and continuously asking ourselves, what is the limit to AI? Where do we want to go as a human? Like, we control technology. Technology doesn't control us, but we still have to set those guardrails, and those guardrails are being we're still deciding where they are. I think the next 5-10 years is going to be really, really fascinating, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see a shift towards a lot more smaller format with social media. And I'm curious how this balance of creating content for different age groups is going to meaning longer format and social media format is going to collide. I think it's going to be interesting.
All right. I know we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but let's maybe put a head on it from this question. Are you seeing improvements in this industry for women? And if so, what are they?
I think there's many improvements for women, more visibility, more job opportunity, more less less lack of being afraid to go into areas that we were not in before, and just thriving, thriving in the industry, in sports, in film, in audio. It's been happening for the last at least 5 to 10 years, and it's been great. I don't think the restrictions have been reduced for us in many ways, and it's just going to get better.
I like that.
I worked a show in November of last year, and it was a really large crew. I want to say the audio crew was like 23 people or something like that, but there were 4 women total on that crew. It was just so wonderful, and it gives me a lot of hope and encouragement.
All good signs. I love to hear it. Here's an interesting question. What kind of career path adjustment do you plan on pursuing if your family grows, such as kids or other obligations? And what kind of advice can you give for people that need to make this kind of adjustment?
Okay, for me, my family's not going to grow. My daughter's already 28. I was I was lucky when I started at the stadium. My supervisor allowed me to bring my daughter when she was 4 years old. So she would come in there and she would be in my office, and she spent a lot of time growing up at the stadium. Everybody knew her more than they knew me. So it was great. That was my support, and with family. So without that ability to bring her so many times a week into the stadium, I don't think I would have been able to survive.
Very, very fortunate.
I have a really interesting story. We're all women here, and hopefully the attendees are. But as I was getting older, I froze my eggs as a contingency. And I got called on to a show very last minute in Vegas, and I was in the middle of doing the hormone shots. And every man on that truck was amazing, because in the middle of the show, I literally was, making the syringe and putting it in me to get ready for that procedure. And I was shocked by all the men around me, through just how like loving and caring they were, offering to like put up a Fernie pad. I was like, guys, we're okay. And also, meanwhile, like the front row, being a woman director, woman AD, the AD was breastfeeding at the time. And even the talent was really great. He gave up his green room for me and the AD, so that she could breastfeed and I could do my shots. And it gave me a lot of hope. It was really, really fun and really nice. So made the process easier.
That is so awesome and so nice to hear. All right, I think that just about wraps up all of the questions that we have. So, Chris, I'll throw it to you to wrap us up today.
All right. Well, you know what? I will reach out to the panel one more time to see if there's any final thoughts, given maybe what you've heard from your fellow panelists here, any parting words of advice for women trying to get into this industry, or, people listening in the audience, now that you've heard their questions, you know what's on their mind. So any closing thoughts from any of you?
I think my closing thoughts would be that technology or any other career that you're interested in, it's there's going to be struggles for sure, but it's worth it. If that's where you want to go, don't be afraid to just take the leap and prepare yourself and go for it.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I feel like I've learned from all of you, listening to some of these stories and, some of the challenges that you went through, you all remained very true to yourself. So, be yourself and don't try to conform to some sort of like standard that you think is being required of the industry or the job that you're in. So that's my big takeaway in listening to all of you. So I hope the audience got that as well. And I do want to thank you all for doing this today. And I hope the audience found it as insightful as I did. As a reminder, this was panel number 3 of 3 so far. So if we're going to be doing more for sure, please let us know what you're thinking. You in the panel, as well as everybody in the audience, if you have suggestions about any changes you'd like to see in the future, just go ahead and drop it in the Q&A, or you can send an email to publicrelations@shure.com. And I have to say too, I'll have to do a plug. Please follow us on social media at Shure, SHURE, to learn more about future panels like this. So thank you all very much, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.